everybody. This is Heather Lockett, and we're having lasting conversations. Today via Zoom, we have the amazing Reneè Barash with us from Chicago. Hey, Reneè.
Hey, how are you, Heather? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Reneè is the Tummy Whisperer. She has her own podcast of the same title, The Tummy Whisperer. And Reneè's wheelhouse is in gut health and digestion and overall health and wellness and balance. And we're going to go right there. We're going to get to, this show usually gets to the heart of everything. We're going to go right to the guts of everything. And so welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you. I'm excited to be here. And
yay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. What is a tummy whisperer?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? I definitely whisper the tummy, but gut health is so important, as you mentioned. And so many people have digestive issues, but what I like to do is kind of shine the light on the not so obvious digestive issues. So while some people may be struggling with gas and bloating and constipation and diarrhea, those are your obvious digestive symptoms, right? But the ones that are not so obvious are sleep issues and skin conditions and cravings and thyroid issues and hormonal issues and all kinds of things that are related to what goes in the mouth, how the body digests, absorbs, and gets rid of the waste. And there's a lot that happens between the mouth and the south that has to take place in order for people to have optimal health so that they're not having the plethora of symptoms that I just mentioned earlier.
Well, that is literally a mouthful. And of course, let's not forget in the South, you might have a little flatulence. So our bodies are amazing structures. And then they tell us some things. And I will just go ahead and jump in that personally. And again, there are no accidents, that I am in the midst of figuring out my own biomes because let's just say things have added up. I did get to turn 60 and some things have added up that we're trying to just figure out. And so this is very interesting work. And I think that one of the main things that is interesting, I don't want to say scary, but the stuff that can bop us on the head is what might add up. Because after so long, our body, what I've been told by my current practitioner is, your body's been on overload. It's been working so hard. And maybe I even need to have some genetic testing that there could be the root goes back so much that this happens and that happens to overcompensate for this, and then that, and one more trigger of a food additive or something, and it can become haywire. So I think one of my questions is, so many of us are going through this, and yes, children could have allergies, but as we have gotten older and our diets have changed, we'll briefly rabbit hole that finding wholesome foods that have not been crazy produced and overproduced and oversalted and overtasked. That's the word that comes to mind. It's overtaxing to our systems. And don't get me wrong, I have been known to adore all the donuts and any taco and all the stuff. I haven't really been a fast food girl, and yet our daily diet really can just, like I keep saying, it can just add up. And perhaps is it really too much?
Well, especially now.
That's one of my questions. I'll go ahead and start throwing that out because we kind of know, really minding our P's and Q's about portion or about this or this, but there's something else happening here that seems to be more complicated maybe in the Western diet than in other parts of the world.
Well, for one, and a lot of this, we're one of the only countries that allows Roundup and genetic modification of our foods. And our human bodies don't really recognize that. And so what happens is body starts to put up some kind of defense or thinks that what's incoming is a problem. And then you start to have these immune triggers affecting your body and thyroid, and you've got this perfect storm of these foods that aren't as clean as they were when you and I were younger. So I'm right behind you in age, but I do want to touch on it. You talked about the genetic testing. That's such a big thing now, and I think it's great. And I will say it's good to know how your body downregulates this, that, and the other. However, I think that if we kind of just even dial it back to not being so specific in terms of what the genes are, and having more of a generalization of cleaning up the diet and cleaning up the lifestyle, that's where the magic is. Because you can, your genes turn on by diet, environment, emotions, right? And then if all of those are perfectly in alignment, you've got the storm going on. But if you can start to kind of work on all those on your end, right, then you can start to turn off some of the reasons why the body may respond to something, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes complete sense, because it's all about communication and the wiring. And I know we focus on brain and heart health, but the gut has its own brain. And obviously, and I'm not a doctor, but the whole biome, the neurosynapses of how the communication goes, I think is actually where you were headed.
Definitely. I mean, and again, food is neurotransmission for the brain, either, the slowest form of poison or the most healing kind of, support for the body. It just depends. And this, doing what you do for a living, so many people get stuck in some kind of feedback loop and they can't move the needle because they get so stuck in a pattern, or they start to change the diet, or they don't know what to change the diet to, or they've done all this testing. And I see client after client who come to me with thousands of dollars of fancy testing, and they're still no better. And why is that?
I would love to hear all about that, because one of the words, somehow the word conflicted is coming up, but because there can be conflicting information. This is healthy, this is not healthy. Have garlic, well, no, that might kill you too. Or this or that, what are the triggers? So it goes exactly what you're saying in terms of, from your work with your clients, what is your perspective when someone has come to you to say, ow, I hurt, or something is happening, and here's my lab work, which is pages long.
Well, one thing that comes to mind, and happens to me all the time, is that, again, all these fancy tests are done and there's nothing wrong with them. But if there's no test run for your digestive system, which I've been using the same test in my practice for coming up on 19 years, it is a full systems body check to see how your body is not only digesting what's going in, but what's happening on an absorptive level, what's happening on a detoxification level, an overgrowth level. Are there infections? Is there sugar spilling into the urine? Is there protein spilling into the urine? Is the gut leaking? It shows me all that. So if that test hasn't been run, and these people are coming to me saying, I've got, bowel issues, I'm having pain, I've changed my diet, I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free, I get that a lot, and they're still suffering. Why is that? One, they're probably eating foods that are too high in the wrong chemistry. So what I like to do is I like to break down oxalates and salicylates and histamines and see if we need to kind of lower some of those in somebody's life. Because once we work on those chemistries of the foods, that can make a world of difference, even while we're waiting for the test results to come back. So that's part one. A lot of these functional medicine practitioners don't really look at the diet per se like that. They might say, let's take out gluten, dairy, eggs, or run a food sensitivity test, which I don't love those tests because they pick up what you're eating. So if you're eating blueberries every day with your oatmeal,
they're going to pick that up.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, I had one of those years ago, and I thought, well, this is great. And yet every single thing became this sensitive marker. And again, what was healthy? I was having the blueberry, or I was having the cranberry, I was having this.
Right.
And I was very dejected, because it gets very confusing.
It can be, it can be, like you said, and it's beautifully put. All of a sudden you don't know what to eat, and then you've got fear around food.
Well, there it is. And then the fear begets the stress, begets the clamp down of your belly. So keep on whispering. Reneé, keep on whispering.
Yeah. I mean, it is so important to really, just for people to not get so locked into their test results and locked into, like, I can't have eggs ever again. Do what we can in the beginning till these symptoms start to turn back, and then try to introduce some more stuff so that you have more variety to eat. And that is something else that I love doing. I help people give more of a variety so that they're not limited to the 10 things that they can only eat, and they're stuck in that cog. So, once we start balancing out the gut and digesting a good anti-inflammatory diet that's right for you or you or you, different from you or you or you, not everybody has the same diet, things can start to turn around. And I feel very strongly about it's so important what you do, because you help people change their mind through energy and through sound and through healing. And it's such a beautiful thing to be able to just, when you're stuck in this, like, I'm afraid to eat, I don't know what to do, I don't feel good, you have the ability to help people just go, all right, we're going to hit the reset button. And I love that.
Well, thank you. And Renee's referring to when I've been doing the sound bowls and sound baths, and you were recording your own podcast this afternoon and incorporated the sound baths. So yes, having something that can be a little of a switch when we're feeling the stress, when we're feeling that overwhelm and overload, what is it that might be able to help us breathe a little deeply? And I will say there could even be some frequencies that could target certain areas in our body to help relax or to release what needs to be released. And those were conversations I had with Kathleen Hayden and her husband John when we were talking about vibration. And this gets into the heart of so much also in terms of what we might be carrying in our bodies that we don't even know about. So that might be a different segue, but it goes to really what you're talking about.
It does.
Stuck. What is lodged? What have we been carrying for so long we don't even know it?
Right. And back to maybe our genes turning on from trauma. I mean,
they're right.
It's there, and psychoneuroimmunology is really a big important piece. And I'm a firm believer that trauma turns on all the bad stuff. So I said it. I feel it's true.
Well, does that actually, it just turns on the fear, these essentially the frequencies of the fear factors and the cascade of that?
And then everything else kind of goes
to of it. Yeah.
Right. And then everything else sort of spins out of control. So it's definitely the start of it. And like you said earlier too, and so many people just don't have the wherewithal to be able to say, hey, I'm going to pause, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to breathe. They need to change their frequency somehow. So you have such a gift for that. And it's something that I'm missing. I obviously meditate for myself and I share with people, to do it, but you are, you're an expert and a conduit to be able to help people chill and just receive
and switch gears. Thank you. So one of the other things that you started to touch on, and we mentioned before we started recording, is that everybody's body is different. And so God knows there's been so many fads and so many, and even right now, talk about getting fried in the brain, keto and paleo and vegan and raw vegan and this and this and the gluten-free or this or this or this, dairy. It's
mind-numbing.
It's mind-numbing and it's boggling. And then there's organic and then semi-organic or my God, I'm so bad because I don't have this raw vegan, blah, blah, blah. So these are then these storylines, just walking down a grocery store aisle, let alone a restaurant. That's a whole different conversation in terms of what's available.
Right.
So again, walk us through what can become the monkey mind of so much information. I'll throw one more thing out there, which a friend of mine is personally feeling so much better for her because she's doing something called the blood test by her blood test. So she's cut out pistachios and avocados, things. And then, but here's the thing. Then you try to say, well, you should do that. I don't know, maybe, but this is where we can get collectively so complicated that we are not a one size fits all.
Something I always say, and here's something to keep in mind. And so you mentioned, I'll just go back to touching on, was she doing eat right for your blood type? And so she took out
something along those lines.
So she took out.
She feels better for her. I think it cut out her migraines, whatever. We all each individually, our chemistries are so minutely different that that's why, to have services like yourself that can really fine tooth comb what I would need, which would be different than what somebody else might need.
Well, and right. And in terms of pistachios and avocados, those are two foods that are very high in histamine and oxalate. So not necessarily does she have a sensitivity to those foods, but she may have an overflow in her bucket of oxalates or histamines. So when you can lower the lower the amount of that stuff going in, and everybody's threshold is different, right? To what they can tolerate, then again, being able to incorporate that stuff in, she may never be able to. She may be able to have at certain times. She may be able to have pistachios one day and wait 3 days and then have some avocado. It just really depends. So my invitation for people is to just try, know what you know about your body. I'm here to help give you some guidance and some information. It doesn't mean just because I give you a low oxalate list that you can't have anything on that list. What it means is maybe we take 3 things out, see how your body responds. And if you're like, hey, like I'm noticing I'm doing pretty good. Maybe after a week or 2, we try one of those foods and see. So I do like the lists of these foods that people can kind of use as a blueprint, but it is just a blueprint. So again, the invitation and the excitement for me is to really help people know what they kind of need to avoid. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes for people can be difficult, especially when we're talking with foods that are high in histamine. There's a lot out there. If you're already gluten-free, then you got to look at tomatoes and peppers. And it's like, well, what do you put on your gluten-free pasta for sauce? We work on pesto recipes and olive oil and, a lot of different things that we can do and experiment with. So like you said, no one size fits all, and starting with whatever the starting point is, and then going from there, whether we're working on a big restriction in the beginning or a minor restriction, and seeing if we need to restrict some more. And then once the body's coming up and things are moving along, add something in and see what the body tells you, see what your body says. It's about kind of getting quiet and paying attention. If you can. I know you can, but I mean, you rhetorically.
Well, what you don't know is that it's so much of a mind game. It really is. Aside from triggers, and you mentioned cravings, right now I can say, well, let's just say it's interesting this time of year. This time of year is one of the many seasons, I should say, where there's cookies, and then that's a tradition, and we love to bake, and I love to bake, and I may or may not have some chocolate brickle. Right today, my stomach wouldn't like that at all. But that sometimes for me, my body went, yeah, you don't really need to be drinking anymore. I wasn't much of a drinker. So to me, I didn't care. I would go like, oh, you mean I'm not having a glass of wine, a glass of wine right today? Like, nah. Oh, okay. Because my body must have just decided it was time. I didn't need it. I have a sip every once in a while for a celebration or my son's wedding toast? Absolutely. And was in that moment, that was the moment. But in general, the harder nut, and I've gone on and off coffee, that's a hard one because that's social. There's something very grounding to it. There's, again, the caffeine. So there's so much just within coffee or within so many foods, let alone the sugars or the dairies or the wheats and all the things that is ubiquitous. It's in everything that
everything.
Everything. And it's hard. It can be really hard, because of the social aspect, because if you're not partaking, now what are you going to do? That's a whole behavioral conversation.
Exactly.
That we can rabbit hole, but there's a web. The strings together with this entire genre of to have what is healthful. I will throw in some Ayurvedic where they add the whole season. Is our season changing?
Yes, that's huge in terms of your organs and all that. And it's funny that you mentioned alcohol and coffee. I had my list here. I did for my podcast today was the 12 days, like the 12 days of Christmas, but it was the 12 ways to improve digestion. And number 7 was limit alcohol, and number 8 was limit caffeine. So that was out there. And again, there is a social aspect to alcohol. I like to feel a little relaxed from a glass of wine. My body can't really handle much more than a couple of sips from time to time. So I know what my threshold is. And, you just kind of have to lean into it and expand being able to have a little bit more by maybe being a little bit more behaved, during the week. But it just really, it depends. And the coffee thing, that's another thing. I think I feel like the caffeine is the problem, not the coffee. Coffee itself can be
Interesting.
Yes, caffeine, this disrupts the neurochemistry. It disrupts your hormonal system, your neuroendocrine system. Caffeine just does that. But for some people, coffee, like my husband, coffee is very protective. It can be very helpful. I don't like that some of my clients, like I can't, function without a cup of coffee in the morning. That tells me you need to do some more work on the back end so that you can get your butt out of bed in the morning. Because if you wake up and you're like, oh, I just need another like 45 minutes and you need coffee to get going, you're not eating something that is friendly for your body. You're probably not digesting it. It's affecting your adrenals and it's causing a big stress to the system. And that's why you're so exhausted in the morning. So that's one thing to consider. When you really need that caffeine, it's time to start working on the diet and the digestion.
Sure. Well, and I think that can hit with all of it. And whether it's a sugar craving or chocolate, whatever it is, that you must have all of it.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and it's funny that you bring up chocolate. I mean, because I don't drink coffee because I can't, but don't talk to me about chocolate because I'm like, if I don't buy it, it's not here. But when I buy it, I'm like trying to pretend that like 2 little squares are enough. And then I'm like, nope, more. So believe me, I don't sit in this chair like almighty. I definitely have to work on my stuff as well too, as I kind of sail through menopause. But
well, so we can hit on adrenals, we hit on hormones, the things. There's so many things that, again, kind of the hidden, I don't want to call them time bombs, but just the hidden stuff that we might not know. And as our bodies do change, and I know from my group of girlfriends, we'd get together once a month, and what we could do or accomplish perhaps in our 20s and 30s, having to do with, having drinks or eating a certain way, or the drinks on the Friday night.
Yeah.
I started to hear, oh yeah, no, I don't have wine anymore. It gives me a headache. Or no, now there's a lot of water bottles instead of beer bottles. It's just our bodies start telling
bottles of water.
I know. Our bodies do start telling us something. Like that was okay then, and now let's try something completely different.
Well, and you know why that is too. Our organs of detoxification get
they get tired.
overloaded. Well, they get overloaded. Like, how often do you change the garbage bag? At least every couple of days. And what would happen if you don't? It's the same thing with your organs, right? Your liver, your kidneys, your spleen, lungs, skin, everything needs a little bit of detoxification. Even if I didn't talk about this today, but I might next time, a little bit of even dry brushing, just some lymph, just to kind of in the morning, I like to just do a little, you can buy on Amazon. It's like a little bristle brush. You could just kind of do some circles toward the heart. I get my thighs, I get my calves, and I just go up toward the heart, even just to move that lymph.
Right.
Helps the body detoxify. And it's so easy to do it. It takes a minute. There's lymphatic breathing exercise that you can do seated that my mentor taught me. And it's wonderful. It's a very simple inhale, arms up, exhale, arms down. And for people that have shoulder issues, they can just inhale and exhale.
Your chin up, inhale, chin up.
Yeah,
well, that's a whole nother thing too, is that we're so bent over these days, and I'll catch myself to literally stretch posture and put chin up and put my phone in the air versus looking down. And maybe that affects our breathing. And so you're calling it lymphatic breathing, which is a little bit different than the diaphragm breathing.
Yeah.
There's so many breathing techniques.
This one is a lymphatic, made to move the lymph. And then the diaphragmatic breathing could be any kind of breathing is diaphragmatic breathing, because if you're expanding, your diaphragm's moving. So, even just breathing alone could be something free people could do for better digestion.
Right. And you had mentioned about the dry brushing, but how about just tapping and
sure,
giving ourselves a hug or squeezing, just all of these synaptic movements. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Any kind of movement. You can just kind of like, I like to kind of flop my arms. Sometimes I like to just raise one hand and then raise the other hand. But even after a meal, if you could just, kind of just raise your arms up and open up your rib cage, that makes some room for the food going down, opens up the diaphragm, makes room for the tummy to do what it needs to do. Movement is huge. So many people are so stuck. Tech neck, they're on their phone. They're not, I do it too. I catch myself,
Sure.
And I'm like, wait, and like put the phone down, hands free, and start looking up.
So what would you say to people who are feeling confused, whether they're, yes, going into a store, going into whether it's a natural food store and the rows of vitamins and rows of supplements and rows of foods and rows and rows and rows and all those messages,
overwhelming.
What we think we could or should, the should and should and should or should not. Just, is there a few pointers, especially in this time of year? No, forget this time of year, because this time of year it's all about the big boys, the sugar, the sugar, the gingerbread, the sugar, right? Exactly. The alcohol, the sugar, which is sugar, alcohol,
right?
So even about all of that, and all the trays of the cheese and crackers and all those charcuterie boards.
Oh, yummy
charcuterie boards. But even on the day-to-day, the confusion where we can short circuit ourselves, are there some tips to help go up and down those aisles and put something in our baskets?
Yeah, I love this question. It's, I would say less is more. Less is more. People, I got to get the vitamin C, the vitamin D. I need elderberry. I need the cough drops. I need my gluten-free bread. I need the waffles. I need just try a few things and don't overdo, because you can, for some people who don't have the knowledge, they'll get home and kind of like wonder what to do with everything. And I like to just try one thing at a time. In fact, even when I get my test results back from my clients, I'm maybe using 1 to 2 things initially, and then maybe adding something to see how the body responds to it. So I would say the invitation is to try some things, see how it feels in your body. If you feel like, hey, I think that supplement does something, I'm not quite sure, but I'm noticing something, then it's good. If you notice that you take something or you eat something like, I'm not sure. Like I used to do a lot of bone broth, which is very high in histamine and not right for my body. It's caused a lot of inflammation for me. For other people, it could be okay. But I would eat the bone broth and it was so good. And I would sit there and go, I'm not feeling bad, but somehow energetically, it just didn't feel right for me. Come to find out years later, I've got a histamine intolerance and, light mast cell activation. So high histamine foods are out.
So how do you test for these sorts of things? And I didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead and finish.
That's okay.
And then,
So again, just getting quiet and just paying attention to your body. If that's not too, simple, some people can and some people can't, but you can develop your intuition for yourself. Do
you do muscle testing? I've heard of that, and people can do. I personally haven't exactly been the best at self muscle testing. There was a brilliant woman who could do it, but I had to do it with my eyes closed, because I didn't want to see what she was testing me on.
Yeah, right. Because you can. I can muscle test myself, and I've learned how to trust myself over the years. Getting sick will do that when you have to kind of trust in what you're doing to your body and putting in your body. So when you doubt, it's like, but then I got good at kind of for myself, and I can get kind of quiet and think about, certainly there's an art to what I do. It's science, what I do, but there's an art to it too. Even doctors who are maybe making a recommendation for a medicine that they think may help their patient, they may have a choice of 3 different ones. They're like, oh, we're going to try this one. It's what they're feeling at that moment, and that's what they want to recommend. And so everybody's got their own self intuition. And I think that's really important to acknowledge for people. So, yeah.
Yes, that's so true. And then I think I asked you, so are there specific tests that you use?
Yes.
Because again, there's certain ones that they might cover. And then there's ones that can run a whole different gamut of things to look out for.
Yeah. So the one that, I
Or
use
send
filter.
your hair in. I mean, there's so many just within the testing things. That could be a whole nother show, which you probably do. But
Yes.
just
Yes.
how to even find the right test for you without
Well,
spending the thousands of dollars that it could take.
yes. Yes. Well, so there is a hair mineral tissue analysis test that I love, but the one that test that I've been using for my whole career is what's called the 24-hour integrated urinalysis panel. And it shows me a wide range of things. So first and foremost, it'll show me how the body digests fats, proteins, and carbs. That's the first part we have to see. How does your body digest and metabolize those things? Next, it'll show me how your body absorbs minerals, calcium, magnesium, vitamin C. It's going to show those levels of absorption due to how your body's breaking down your food. So that's the first part. The second part, it will show me if there's any overgrowths. So what are the overgrowths going to do? They're going to cause detoxification pathway blockages. And if you're blocked in a detoxification pathway, you're going to have poor digestion. So it will show me blockages. It'll show me pathology screenings. It'll show me if somebody's making kidney stones. It shows if somebody's spilling sugar into the urine from not breaking down their carbs. It'll show me yeast and candida. It'll show if they're spilling proteins into the urine. Shows me how hard the kidneys are trying to clean and filter the blood from undigested food particles, hence your leaky gut. So it's, like I said, it's a wonderful test. It's not thousands of dollars too, which is fantastic. It's
Wow.
$350. So, mostly affordable for most people. But it does turn up so many action items. And when people are coming to me with their digestive stuff and their health stuff, you have to always look at what's going in, how the body's using it. Is the body using it? Can the body absorb what it's supposed to absorb and get rid of the waste on a cellular level? And this test shows me all that.
That's amazing. And in some ways it circles back to a thought I had a few moments ago. And especially we'll just stick with caffeine or sugar, any of the things that we are now titrating off of or going to cold turkey, whatever you're going to do. Do you have other advice? Because if our body isn't used to that caffeine or is not used to that sugar, or your body might be in a detox of some sort, you can feel pretty depleted. And
Yes.
what can we add in, if you had thoughts, to kind of help where we're not going,
Minerals. Minerals. People are, and this, people are deathly afraid of salt, especially the older community because of blood pressure, but high salt doesn't create high blood pressure.
The right kind of salt?
Yeah. I mean, I like a Redmond salt or a sea salt. I kind of avoid the pink salt because it's got a lot of heavy metals in it. The Himalayan does. But
really?
Yeah.
See, this is, you just kind of, I got dinged here of, the sea salt, yay. Maybe the
Sea
pink.
salt, yay.
Is there too many metals for this body? What? Again, wait a second.
Right.
What's going on here?
What's going on here?
Wow.
I haven't had pink salt in years. I used to love it, but there's a lot of heavy metals in it. But I like the Redmond salt. That's the cleanest one.
Interesting.
Redmond's or any of the sea salt. But yes, in answer to your question, increase your minerals, salt, your trace minerals, add some trace minerals to your water. Our bodies are so dependent on minerals and we're so deficient in them. So minerals are a great thing to add. Definitely.
Now, how about the water? Now, we won't necessarily get into all the different filtrations, but again, it's and I certainly learned this summer. As a matter of fact, I was traveling and I started to really feel terrible. And I know, the diet was kicking in, but I got this intuitive hit to think about the water. What am I drinking there? And the area was full of rocks. And so I went in, I happened to find a health food store and I asked there, and then I went in for a massage and I mentioned it there. She says, we don't drink the water here. The pipes are 400 years now. The pipes are old. It's kind of counterintuitive because you'd think with all the rocks would be full of minerals, but somehow the processing, it gets lost in translation. Sure. And so I'm going to circle into, and once I learned that and I realized, oh, I need some bottled water and I need to do something else to have those fresh, I just literally would feel, oh my gosh, these are real vegetables and some freshly
Yeah.
made stuff. But talk about the water for a second, and that there's no accident that there are so many water bottling companies. Some are better than others, but this gets also into alkaline or some waters that have some things in it. And can there be too much of something?
Yes. Yes,
Right.
absolutely. So in terms of water, I mentioned to you before we start the show that I use a Berkey. I live out in a place in Illinois where we're on well water. So I'm definitely not,
That's
I'm
a
not going
whole
to
other thing. Right.
I'm not drinking parasites. I have enough already in my body. I don't need to add extras. So I do filter with the Berkey. I do like it. And, it's funny. One of my mentors always said, either buy a water filter or become a water filter. So if you're not going to
Wow.
filter your water, your body's going to be the filter of the water, which you don't want, right? You don't want to have that stuff in your body, your
Oh,
organs filtering out all that stuff.
that gets back
So
into the overload.
that exactly.
Oh, okay.
So in terms of water, if people don't have room for a countertop or, they have limited funds, even like a zero water pitcher would be fine to at least get some of the big stuff out. I think that would be helpful. And depending on what your municipal water is, should always be filtered. I like, for bottled water, some people will buy bottled water. There's Aquapana, which is a mineral water. There's also like Mountain Valley spring water. I don't know much about them other than they taste, pretty good when I have to have them. But definitely filtering the water is good. And if you are purchasing water, make sure, and you know this, that purchase anything always and only in glass, never in plastic.
Mm.
Don't need those estrogen mimickers and phthalates in the plastic that the bottles are sitting in. In fact, Sheryl Crow swears that she got her breast cancer from hot water bottles that were sitting in her car in plastic.
I see.
And I watched an interview with her years ago, and she credits those hot water bottles in her car to the start of her breast cancer.
Wow.
So,
Well, and that gets into, again, we could rabbit hole the whole thing just on the how do you pronounce it? The phthalates, the BPAs,
BPAs and the
or the
phthalates,
PFOS and all of that stuff.
all that stuff.
All that stuff. That's a whole nother show. We'll do that because that stuff's in makeup and everything.
Deodorants and toothpaste.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You and I could probably have, we could talk for the next 5 hours.
But again, there's that word complicated again. So at some point, have our ingredients become complicated? And are we at a great juncture? Maybe some of us are having our bodies kind of go time out, TOs, to remind us of, you really just need good salt, you need decent water, you need fresh food, and some simple ingredients that we've gotten so convoluted with so many things all at the same time. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
So well put. Perfect. To me, it does perfectly. Okay. And then people who don't feel good probably makes sense to them too. Sure. And that's where they can start kind of pausing and thinking a little bit about, hey, I'm listening to Heather's podcasts, and boy, my makeup and my scented garbage bags and my Glade plugins, and don't even get me started on Glade plugins and all the other stuff that people start to, they again overburden their body. If they could start to dial it back and use cleaner things. I mean, because of what I do for a living, and probably you too, I get all these advertisements on Facebook for, green garbage bag, all this other stuff. And now I buy it all. And I'm like, yeah, good. I don't want this plastic stuff in my food in my house. I don't want it. So just having this awareness around trying to kind of clean up the environment, maybe even using a different kind of deodorant that doesn't have the some of the metals in it. And there's a lot of good alternatives out there that you can get at the grocery store, the health food store, Amazon. You can make your own deodorant. I mean, there's just essential oils and baking soda and some coconut. I don't know, something,
If you're not allergic to coconut, whatever, but yes.
Exactly. And then, your body will let you know. But, but there is a lot to know. And I certainly don't know everything. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I also like to help people, see if there's another way to clean up their environment a little bit so they can be healthier, like, just like you.
Well, I appreciate what you just said. If we're here to help somebody find a resource that maybe they hadn't considered, or but find another way, that's kind of the heart of what many of my show topics are about. And I appreciate that you're talking about it as well in your wheelhouse. And I bet you have a lot of happy customers. How long have you been doing this?
I have been a tummy whisperer I'm coming up on my 19th year. So
Wow.
I've been in practice it'll be January, year number 19. I've been in healthcare for over 30 years. And I love helping people. I so enjoy learning along the way. I'm a chronic student. I'm always learning. In fact, I'm in a class right now, learning about hair tissue mineral imbalances and psychoneuroimmunology and how it affects the chemistry of the body and everything that we've been talking about this whole show. So I love it. It's fantastic. And I always tell people, like, I wouldn't do this for a living if I didn't have to. If our environment and our food source was clean, I would definitely, or maybe be doing something else. I don't know. But I've had so many clients come to me over the years, moving here from Europe and other places where the food's a lot cleaner, and they get sick anywhere from like 1 month to a year, and they're having digestive issues, health issues, skin issues, horrible issues from our crappy food here. So I'm glad to be able to do what I do, but at the same time, still a voice for cleaning up this environment because it needs it so desperately.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. And I will tap into our friend Lisa Bolton, who was one of the guests on my show, and she literally travels the world. She just came off of a 2 or 3 months in Japan and in Asia. She goes for long stints, and her show was a beautiful podcast. And one of the things she mentioned was that when she comes home back to California, she starts feeling ill because she has to re-regulate herself and be very mindful of what she eats, because in all these different pockets of the world, it's so much simpler. It's fresh. It's just from that village. The portions are little. There aren't the chemicals. And so it kind of touches on what you were just saying. And, unfortunately here, and probably other parts of the world, maybe certain parts of Europe, that it has become the giant portions and not village farm fresh and simple, where the meal isn't meant to be a giant buffet necessarily. And I can say that as a buffet hound in recovery. It's a thing that there are a lot of chemicals in our foods.
I had a client, one of my clients that moved here from Poland. She said, I used to go out into my dirt patch in my back porch and pick my breakfast. It was blueberries and strawberries. And she made her own like muesli, and, she made her own almond milk, and she was fine there. And she never had any health issues until she moved here. We're one of the only countries, I don't know how, I think there's maybe 3 or 4 countries, that's it, that still allow Roundup. We're one of, every other country's banned it, not us. And we were wandering around, wondering why we have to, walk for the cure.
Well, I guess, and that's kind of the question. We're touched about the water, what's left in the water that has any of the minerals and nutrients, what's left in our foods that hasn't been stripped away or modified, but really just sapped away because the earth itself isn't that nourishing, perhaps.
No,
it's a good question. It's a good question. And I think there are people with boots on the ground looking at this to say something's got to give here.
Hopefully the right people, and hopefully in our lifetime that we can somehow either get it in a bottle or rebound it back, because, take advantage of Mother Earth. And, that's another whole show.
That's a whole nother one.
I'll zip it out now.
So Reneé, thank you so much. So again, your podcast itself is called The Tummy Whisperer.
The Tummy Whisperer, correct.
And you are there weekly, and you have information
every other week.
Every other week. Okay.
For every other week. Yep.
Every other week. That's great. And do you have a website or other ways people could find you?
Yes, thetummywhisperer.com. So it's easy to find me, Digestive Health Solutions, but most people will remember thetummywhisperer.com. And yeah, I love answering questions. So please feel free to reach out with an email or a phone call, and happy to help people sort of connect the dots in a way that can help give them a little push forward with their health.
This is a beautiful thing. Thank you so much,
Thank you for
Reneé.
having me. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, Heather. And,
Wonderful.
Yeah, I have to have you on my podcast. So
Well, thank you. I would love to do that. We could just keep on talking, and I really appreciate it. And the timing is impeccable. So
Yes.
thanks again. And thanks again for listening, everybody. Please be sure to like, review, and share this podcast. And if you want to be part of the conversation, send emails to podcasts@lastingconversations.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube. This is Lasting Conversations. We get to the heart of everything.